Okay, so we're doing the if statements exercise. It's the first programming task in the logic exercise. It's part of week 1 dealing with data. So if you go on to this tab right here, take you to this exercise. I prefer to use the REPL portal. Just this is the button here that takes you to it, and here you have your exercise preloaded program, your problem statement, and also you can notice here that this tab here gives you access to about 1,000 data entries. They seem to be random numbers, random integers between 0 through 9. So always make sure to thoroughly read the problem statement. Usually a lot of confusion can arise from negligence to read this information here. So here it tells you what happens if you run the code that's already on inside the code editor, and it tells you that a graph with 1,000 points is generated. The x coordinates are such, the y coordinates are such, and all of that stuff. And this bit tells you what the program actually does as it is right now. And this highlighted in bold, this section here, this is what your program that you write is meant to achieve. So these programming tasks, there are written tests that are designed to verify that your program does what your lecturer asks you to do. So these automated tests here, they do exactly what they say they do. They test your program to make sure that it achieves the required results. So all you need to do is write a program that achieves a result that can be verified by these tests. You need to essentially satisfy the tests. And to satisfy said tests, you need to do in this program, you need to change the variable called filter into a single integer that is initialized to 0, replace the code that plots the graph with code that prints the final value of filter. Lastly, modify the code that is executed in data. The ith index in data is equal to 5, so as to ensure that when filter is output by your print statement, it is equal to the total number of 5s in the array called data. So there's a lot to unpack here. We can divide this set of requirements into small steps that we can implement in our program here. So first one, change the variable called filter into a single integer that is initialized to 0. That's fairly straightforward. We've done that right here. Actually, let me reset this so I can take it, so I can load up the program that is standard for all of us here. So it was initially initialized as an numpy array with len with as many entries as there are data points in this data file right here. So 1,000 of them. What the problem statements tells us to do is to change that into an integer that is initialized to 0, and that's fairly straightforward. We do that as such. Filter equals 0. Okay. Next step, replace the code that plots the graph with code that prints the final value of filter. Okay. The code that plots the graph is right here, plt.plot, and instead of that, the problem statement asks us to replace it with code that prints the final value of filter. So that's simply print filter. Lastly, modify the code that is executed when data is equal to 5. When data I is equal to 5. Data square brackets I just means the ith index in the data file. So if I is equal to 1, then it's the first index in data here. And if I is 99, it's the 99th data entry in this list called data here. So what the program tells us to do is to modify the code that is executed when data square brackets I is equal to 5. So this condition arises in this if statement here. So what we need to do is modify the code that is executed when this condition is fulfilled, and that code is this this block right here following the semicolon, or the colon, not semicolon. So the problem statement tells us to change it so as to ensure that when filter is output by a print statement, it is equal to the total number of 5s in the array called data. So what we need to do is, as we iterate through data using this statement here, we need to count the number of data entries in data here, in this file here, that are equal to 5. So whenever the ith index in data, the ith data entry in data is equal to 5, we need to increment our filter count by 1. So we do that by taking the variable that we want to increment. We do plus equals, and then we increment. And that essentially is a code that fulfills all of these requirements here. And we can run the tests to make sure, and it executes all the required results. You can submit, run the tests one final time, and that is how you complete this exercise.